seems to me there's a very common presupposition, occasionally voiced but often unvoiced, and it is this, that on 9/11 everybody, especially those on the scene, knew that the towers came down because they were hit by airplanes, and the airplanes obviously damaged them, and the fires subsequently damaged them, and through some kind of structural failure, which usually people don't want to get into in detail, they came down and it was obvious. And that was the story, and that was the perception, and that was the belief. And that people who suggest controlled demolition brought them down are latecomers. They're revisionists. They're people who came along later with their cockeyed theory. And they perhaps have some special conspiratorial way of thinking, which leads them to unnecessarily complicate a simple situation. And I think this is a very powerful presupposition. I get this almost every time I give an interview to the media on it. And it's false. It's a falsification of history. The idea that these buildings came down because of explosions, and even, more specifically, because of explosives planted in the building, was an idea found all over the place on 9/11. On the scene by eyewitnesses, even on television, on the radio, in the paper. Very common. And it's important that we know that. It changes our perspective on this.
We saw these planes crash today and then saw these buildings fall. People were questioning exactly what happened, what could have caused it. We have a World Trade Center engineer who has a comment.
They're very strong buildings, as you remember from the blast the last time. So,
But what does it take as an engineer to do the damage? Oh, no.
As this man is standing here saying they're very strong buildings and that he expected them to continue to stand, we in the background see the buildings collapse, which again feeds that feeling that there was something else, that there may have been something else that brought those buildings down.
There was a lot of talk there in New York of another explosion prior to the collapse of the first building.
Oh my God!
It was an explosion. It was way up where the fire was, and the whole building at that point bellied out in flames, and everybody ran.
When the building did collapse, or whatever it was that happened, it was a huge explosion, a huge rumbling cloud of smoke and fire came across Church Street.
About 20 stories below, at least that's what it looked like to me, about 75 flights up below the fire. I saw from the corner, boom, 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 just like 20 straight hits, just went down, and then I just saw the whole building just went, and as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode, and then I just turned around and I just started running for my life, because at that point the World Trade Center was coming right down from the corner, boom, 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 boom. The whole building just went, and as the bombs were going, people just started running, and I sat there and watched a few of them explode.
We didn't think that the building would fall. You know, they had the First Interstate Bank building fire in Los Angeles, fire in Pittsburgh, and we've never had a high-rise collapse like that, and it was just absolutely shocking to us to sit there and watch it happen live for both of the towers to collapse. That was, I know for us, extremely unexpected.
Oh my God! More explosion. Huge explosion.
Federal agencies that were down there do believe that there was some sort of explosive device somewhere else besides the planes hitting.
We heard a very loud blast, an explosion. We looked up, and the building literally began to collapse before us.
Then somebody said that they saw an airliner go into one of those towers. Then, I don't know, an hour later than that, we had that big explosion from much, much lower. I don't know what on earth caused that.
We were just about to come out of the building. There was another blast. and all the lights went out, and this is what happened then.
The glass came down?
We didn't see we were still inside the building. All we heard was a big blast, and the whole volume of air moved.
Doctors treating the injured here say most of the 100 patients treated so far are suffering not just smoke inhalation and eye damage, but fractures. Many of them have told the doctors that they were responding to the attack on the South Tower when they were suddenly trapped by the second explosion in the North Tower, and many of the fractures they're suffering come not from fallen debris, but from the concussive force of the explosion, which slammed them against walls, knocked them to the ground, or slammed them up against their own ambulances.
When the first tower collapsed, it was a massive explosion.
It was a secondary explosion, probably a device either planted before or on the aircraft that did not explode until an hour later.
The FBI is here, as you can see. They had roped this area off. They were taking photographs and securing this area just prior to that huge explosion that we all heard and felt.
Unbelievable.
There has just been a huge explosion. We can see a billowing smoke rising.
New York's bravest never had a chance.
We really never even got that close to the building. An explosion blew and it knocked everybody over.
I spoke with some police officials moments ago, Chris, and they told me that they have reason to believe that one of the explosions at the World Trade Center, aside from the ones that may have been caused by the impact of the plane with the building, may have been caused by a van that was parked in the building that may have had some type of explosive device in it. So their fear is that there may have been explosive device planted either in the building or in the adjacent area.
Oh my God! That was a bomb that did that.
Oh God, look at that!
That was a fucking bomb that did that. There's no goddamn way that could have happened.
And that did look like there was an explosion as it went down.
It went up.
I mean, that wasn't just because the building lost its structural integrity.
Everybody was being ushered through the complex away from Liberty. All of a sudden, it was like bang, 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 like bullet shots. And then all of a sudden, 3 tremendous explosions. And everything started coming down.
I looked up, that's when I heard the explosion. That's when the second tower came down.
As if a demolition team set off when you see the old demolitions of these old buildings.
I am reasonably sure that it was not the impact of the plane, the one that did this.
There was another explosion on the far side of one of the buildings from where we're standing. The reverberation and another explosion on the right-hand side.
Just seconds ago, there was a huge explosion, and it appears right now the second World Trade Tower has just collapsed.
Here we go.
We've heard reports of secondary explosions after the aircraft impacted, whether in fact there wasn't something else at the base of the towers that in fact were the coup de grace to bring them to the ground.
I was in World Trade 1 on the 67th floor at approximately 8:50. I have a window office, and I heard like the roars of a jet engine coming, and I looked out and I saw above my head, I guess it must have hit on the 80th around their floor, but we heard the impact, and then we immediately started going down the stairs. But then when we got down to about 3, we heard like another explosion. I don't know what that was.
Next thing we know, we had to get out of the building. We stuck on the stairs for a while. We finally got down to the lobby. Then we get to the lobby, it was this big explosion.
For those of you just joining us, as you continue to look live at the only standing tower remaining of the World Trade Centers, the second had collapsed not too long ago. Both have been hit by planes. We understand it was a third explosion, however, that brought the tower to collapse.
We saw the plane go into the building.
And at that point, were you running?
We ran. We ducked out of the way. Debris was flying all through the air. Everybody was running. And then after it settled down and there was an internal explosion in the building, maybe like 10, 15 minutes later.
I never in a million years feared those buildings coming down. Never. I did fear secondary explosion.
There were numerous secondary explosions taking place in that building. There were continuous explosions.
It was actually on the 78th floor of the second tower, and was evacuating the tower and experienced all these explosions and made his way back down. Came in with penetrating abdominal wound and also open shoulder separation, dislocation.
The tower would not have collapsed absent some tremendous trauma.
Absolutely.
1013 912 has had a major explosion and what appears to be a complete collapse surrounding the entire area.
This is as close as we can get to the base of the World Trade Center. You can see the firemen assembled here, the police officers, FBI. A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us.
People were just standing around, talking to each other, nodding their heads. Our gun's going! Our gun's going!
Pfeiffer was the first chief into the building. Right away, a guy from the Port Authority told him the damage was somewhere above the 78th floor. But all you had to do was look around. It was obvious. Something had happened right there in the lobby.
You just saw that all the windows were blown out. The lobby looked like the plane hit the lobby.
The ladies that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby, where they report they believe there was a bomb in the lobby.
As we were coming out, we passed the lobby. There was no lobby. So I believe the bomb hit the lobby first, and a couple of seconds then the first plane hit.
As we were moving towards the building, we saw the top begin to blow out in a plume of smoke, and we heard the noise associated with an implosion.
Again, it appears that an aircraft of some sort did hit the side of the Pentagon. The west front, which faces sort of toward the cemetery.
Going into Tower 1, we heard a loud explosion coming from the area of Building 2, and at that point, Building 2 was collapsing.
You said it sounded like the 4th of July. You heard a big explosion before the building fell?
I saw it as it was happening, and it sounded as if you had 100 of those little black cat firecrackers and you lit them all off at once. That's what it sounded like.
Another explosion at the World Trade Center. Apparently, bombs may have been placed at the base of those buildings.
It's like holy hell coming down them stairs. And then when we finally got to the bottom, they were coming out on a mezzanine level there, and another explosion came right on me, just everyone flying.
We made it outside. We made it about a block.
We made it at least 2 blocks, and we started running. Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was as if they had detonated. If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and running. Floor by floor, instead of popping out.
It was as if they had detonated. If they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down.
The way the towers collapsed seems similar to pictures we've become accustomed to watching, as old buildings like the Kingdome in Seattle are taken down with explosives.
The FBI most likely thinks that there was a car or truck packed with explosives underneath the buildings, which also exploded at the same time and brought both of them down.
Now, that's the first time we're hearing that. So 2 planes and explosives that were in the building. Is that correct?
That is the working theory at this point.
I think a bomb went off in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. But then another plane hit the other building.
I was about 5 blocks away when I heard explosions, 3 thuds, and turned around to see the building we just got out of, antenna tip over and fall in on itself.
Tower number 1, the second tower collapsed. It was the exact same series of detonations.
Something ignited there, though. Maybe they had that was an incredible.
That was an incredible explosion.
And that does not cause from a.
I agree with you. I think it was the 3rd plane, but again,
no, it could have been something. It could have been something that was planted.
Or a bomb planted in the building. Yeah.
Okay, the second tower has gone down.
I'm not going any closer. They had it wired for explosives, obviously.
Again, there was a 3rd explosion. It's unclear what caused it, whether it was a bomb or whether the first plane that crashed into the tower had somehow been booby-trapped with a bomb that was timed to explode later after the crash had occurred.
This defies belief.
The chief safety of the fire department of New York City told me that shortly after 9 o'clock, he had roughly 10 alarms, roughly 200 men in the building trying to effect rescues of some of those civilians who were in there, and that basically he received word of the possibility of a secondary device, that is another bomb going off. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place, and then an hour after the first hit here, with the first crash that took place, he said there was another explosion that took place in one of the towers here. So obviously, according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
I said, there's no way. That's a steel structure. That's just draperies and carpets and so on. And I didn't really finish that sentence. And right up at the top, like we were invited to watch, boom, 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 down it started to come.
It didn't fall over. It looked as if somebody put TNT all throughout that building.
This was clearly, the way the structure is collapsing, this was the result of something that was planned. It's not accidental that the first tower just happened to collapse and then the second tower just happened to collapse in exactly the same way.